Hi, I'm Hafeez and I'm going to take you through to the new session about target costing. So let's get started to learn target costing. Okay, before we understand target costing system, we need to have a look at a little bit about the traditional costing systems. Under the traditional costing systems, whether it is absorption costing, marginal costing, activity-based costing, one feature is common in all of them. The accountants have to calculate cost of every product or service we produce by adding direct materials, for example, direct labor or overheads. So materials, labor and overheads, that gives us unit cost per unit. Then we add any profit markup or profit margin, whatever is applicable. So cost plus profit equals to selling price. This is a traditional pricing mechanism. Price is calculated once we know about the cost and then we add profit. Now the problem, it's very simple mechanism, one of the method which has been used for years and years and years, but the method itself has got some inherent problems. Problem is that this is based upon cost of the product. And what if the cost method or cost accounting system we have chosen is not appropriate? What if this cost system is not very accurate? If this is not very accurate, it will lead to an inaccurate selling price. One, if the cost method is not as per the requirements of the market, then it would develop a selling price which may not be appreciated by the customers. So, one thing is, it ignores the market or customers. It does not consider how much customers will be willing to pay. It only focuses on cost. Increase in cost, increase in selling price. Decrease in cost, decrease in selling price. Okay, so entire focus is internal. Secondly, the approach does not provide a direct incentive to keep costs low. Direct incentive is this way, that if managers decrease the cost, selling price will go down, and if the selling price goes down, it will push the volume. But a number of managers believe that if we increase the cost, it will increase the selling price, and if selling price goes up, we can sell or we can generate more revenue, and with more revenue our commission etc. can be higher as well. So a number of people, generally salespeople, believe that keep the cost high so that the price can go up, and if the price goes up we may end up with better commission, better sales incentives. Okay, so it ignores the fact that we should decrease the cost. Now here is the target costing. Target costing is a revised or reversed mechanism. Rather than calculating the cost first and then arriving at the selling price, it works the other way around. Okay, so cost plus profit equals to selling price is the older system. New system is, first of all, we need to calculate the selling price of the product. And this is not a selling price which comes from our own numbers. This is a research-based selling price which, with the help of sales, marketing and any research people, we find out what is the most appropriate selling price customers will be willing to pay in the market. Okay, so for a comparable product, what should be the most reasonable selling price? Once we have arrived at the selling price, then we deduct required profit margin. Okay, it could be 10%, 20%, policy of the company. So selling price minus the profit margin, we arrive at the target cost. Now this target cost represents maximum amount of money to spend on a product or service we will sell to the customers. Okay, now as far as the target cost is concerned, it becomes a challenge for the management. If company is spending within the target, all objectives are achieved, all aims are achieved. But if company spends more than this target, because sometimes the cost is not controlled or reduced due to some of the reasons. So if the company ends up spending more than the target, it generates overspending, or in more technical terms, it creates the cost gap. And this cost gap becomes another challenge for the management. What management should do in order to close or reduce the cost gap? Okay, so cost gap is simply comparison between target cost and the expected cost per unit. That how much we are likely to spend on a product and how much we want to spend on a product. So difference between target cost and expected current cost equals to the cost gap. And there are a number of ways we can reduce the cost gap. For example, we can reduce the component count. We can use the number of components in a material if it's possible. We can use standard components, we can use alternative materials, not necessarily cheaper, but any alternative materials. Instead of plastic 1, we can use grade 2, something like that. Okay, or we can reduce the production complexity. We can buy the better up-to-date, sophisticated plant and machinery or technology. We can ask to design the better production process. And we can ask the production engineers even to design a new product as well, change the design of the product. We can cut down the non-value additions if there are any, okay? And then we can also look into cost control through individual investigation of each process or each department. Wherever there is something extra being incurred, we can reduce. For example, I can give you an example and we'll move on. Remember many years ago, this is product revision or revise the product specification. Remember many years ago we used to have a larger SIM cards which we use on the mobile phones, and recently a year ago, something like that, the company started producing micro SIMs and nano SIMs, very small SIM cards. Now what's the benefit to the organization? Well, if the size of the SIM card goes down, it reduces the amount of material in the SIM card. It reduces the amount of efforts or labor or any other overheads in the product, in the SIM card. And as the product is revised, it's still doing the same job, that we can talk to each other, we can text each other, we can see each other, etc. Okay, but at a lower cost. So it helps the company to reduce the cost. A number of times we notice that packaging cost has been controlled as well. Rather than sending in big large packets, we normally send the package size of the product as well, rather than sending a huge packet. Okay, so a number of things can be applied, but remember, any of the above methods will only be implemented provided we do not compromise the quality. Okay, if any of the steps compromise the quality, then we are not interested to implement those steps. Then we need to start thinking about something else. Okay, why compromising the quality is not a very good idea? Because if customer is not willing to buy that product, this whole target costing system is collapsed. Okay, now here is, interestingly, that's all about target costing. Okay, as per our syllabus, step 1 is determine selling price, step 2 is subtract the profit margin equals to the target cost. Then target cost compared with the current expected cost per unit, you will arrive at the cost gap. And then some suggestions to close the cost gap, and syllabus of target cost or target costing is finished. Question is how examiners can extend this question of target costing to 10 or 15 marks if that's the only thing we have in mind. So here are a few notes for you, that how target costing question can be extended or prolonged into 1-page scenario, 3/4 of a page, to make it 10 to 15 marks question. Okay, so it is some extra complications from other topics, not directly from target costing, but from other topics which can increase the size of this question in the exams. Okay, otherwise it is very little topic. Now, how examiners can complicate it? Number 1, examiners can introduce wastage or loss in the materials. That when we calculate the cost of direct materials, examiners can include the loss or wastage in the material cost, and that can add 1 or 2 extra marks. Now please remember, whenever the loss or wastage is there, adjustment is always done in this way. Okay, some people who've done the paper F2, they may remember it, otherwise please remember this now. Okay, first of all, calculate the cost of materials in the normal way, which is simply quantity times by price. So without even taking the loss into account, work out the cost of materials, okay? And once you have arrived at this, then divide it by 100% minus the percentage of loss. And the loss will be adjusted into the, wastage will be adjusted into the cost of materials. Number 2, adjustment of idle time. Okay, idle time. That if any idle time is given, some time wastage, that can be adjusted as well. Very simple formula, exactly like note number 1. Okay, any time given about the product multiplied by the rate. So hours times by the rate, and then divided by 100% minus the percentage of idle time. And idle time will get adjusted into the labor cost. Job done. Number 3. If overheads are given as a semi-variable cost. A very simple way to identify if the overheads are variable or fixed or semi-variable. If they are semi-variable, then examiner will always give you overheads over a number of periods. Examiner will give you overheads for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, or 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters, or 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years. Okay, so if examiner wants to introduce any semi-variable cost, then they would give us the overheads for a number of periods. And whenever overheads are given for a number of periods, remember to apply high-low method. Remember to apply high-low method to do what? Oh yes, thank you. I heard you. You were telling me to divide the semi-variable cost into variable and fixed cost. Okay, variable cost is calculated just like materials and labor, and when you arrive at the fixed cost, we apply absorption costing. Remember absorption costing, any fixed overheads divided by labor hours or machine hours, etc. Okay, we will see to this as well. So these are kind of extra complications in target costing in order to expand the size of the question for the exam purposes, especially in section B. Okay. Last but not the least, which we may discuss in a separate session, that's involvement of the learning curve. And by using the formula y equals to ax to the power b, okay, which we will discuss later on in a separate topic, okay, it comes from budgeting or quantitative elements of budgeting, okay, learning curve. So sometimes examiners add another 4 or 5 marks, 6 marks relating to learning curve to expand the size of the target costing question, okay. Now you need to remember these basic calculations before we arrive at the final answers. But please remember, target costing is very simple idea. It starts from selling price minus the profit margin equals to target cost. Then compare this target cost with the current expected cost, you get to the cost gap. And if examiner has asked you to discuss any possible ways to close the cost gap, remember the ones I have discussed with you. Okay? Here we go. Let's have a look at an example. Okay, Edward Limited. First of all, if you look at the requirement is calculate the expected cost per unit for the radio and identify any cost gap that might exist. Okay, so in order to arrive at the cost gap, what we need to do is this. Whether it is this company or any other question under consideration, cost gap is arrived in this way. First of all, we need to know the expected selling price. Then we subtract profit margin, and always remember it is given to you as a percentage in the question, so you don't need to worry too much about this. So expected selling price minus profit margin equals to target cost. And this target cost is compared with current or expected cost, in this case cost of a radio, and the difference is called as cost gap. But not any difference. I will explain which difference. Sometimes there may be a cost gap, sometimes there may not be any cost gap, but when we get to that stage I will explain. Okay, let's have a look at this information. Edward Limited is planning to manufacture and sell radios in the local market. The selling price of $44 has been set in order to compete with a similar radio on the market that has comparable features to Edward Limited. So, selling price has been identified, which is $44. Is that okay? Afterwards, the board has agreed that acceptable margin after allowing for all production costs should be 20%. So margin is given to us, which is 20%. Okay, so 20% of the $44 would be acceptable profit margin in the eyes of management. So we can do 44 times by 20%, which is 8.8 or 880. So 44 minus 880, we arrive at the target cost, which is 35.20. So meaning to say is 35.20 is the maximum budget company can spend on one radio. If they will spend less than 35.20, it is a win-win situation, no cost gap. But if company will spend more than 35.20, then this is something to worry about, and that would develop the cost gap. Okay, so any overspending is cost gap. Please remember, any overspending is cost gap. Spending less than target cost is not a cost gap. Spending more than target cost is a cost gap. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at the information provided. Cost information for the new radio is as follows, that if they produce their own radio, following costs. Component number 1, which is a circuit board. These are bought in and cost $410 each. They are bought in batches of 4,000, and additional delivery costs are $2,400 per batch. So here is the cost of component number 1. Now I'm calculating current or expected cost of one radio as a working. Okay, so here we go. Working number 1. Okay, first of all, component 1, which is a circuit board. Okay, they said the basic price is $410, and on top of this they spend $2,400 on delivery, and in this delivery they receive 4,000 components number 1 divided by 4,000 units. Okay, and that would work out the overall cost of component number 1. So this is how questions are extended with more details. Okay, so 2,400 divided by 4,000 units, which is 0.6, and if we add with 410, it is 4.7. So that's the total cost of component 1, including basic price plus shipping or delivery charges. Then the component number 2. Okay, component number 2 is a wiring. In an ideal situation, 25 centimeters of wiring is needed for each completed radio. However, there is some waste involved in the process, as wire is occasionally cut to the wrong length or is damaged in the assembly process. Okay, so generally we need 25 centimeters, but some wire is damaged in the cutting process. Edward Limited estimates that 2% of the purchased wire is lost in the assembly process, and wire costs 50 cents per meter to buy. Now there are two little complications in here. Okay, you might have noticed already. First thing is loss. That we need 25 centimeters in a radio, but in cutting process 2% is lost. So we need to adjust that 2%. Second complication is that we are given the quantity in centimeters, 25 centimeters, and we are given the price in meters, 0.50 per meter. So remember, there are 100 centimeters to a meter. So we need to convert centimeters into a meter or meter into centimeters, somehow like with like idea. Okay, so here is the cost of the wiring. Okay, component number 2. Right, okay, it's 25 centimeters, okay, divided by 100, that will convert centimeters into meters, multiplied by the price, which is 0.50. Okay, so if there was no loss, this was the value or cost of the wiring in a radio. But because there is a loss as well, and remember my formula, divide the normal cost by 100% minus the percentage of loss, which is 2% in this case. And here we go, 25 over 100 times by 50 cents divided by 98%, and it comes to 0.127 or 0.13 to be precise, rounded off. Okay, so this is the way we adjust things. Afterwards, the next is other materials cost 810 per meter per radio. Other materials 810. Okay. Afterwards, assembly labor. These are skilled people who are difficult to recruit and retain. Edward Limited has more staff of this type than needed, but is prepared to carry this extra cost in return for the security it gives to the business. Okay, whatever reason they want to keep these people. It takes 30 minutes to assemble a radio, and the assembly workers are paid $12.60 per hour. So if there is no other information available, normal one radio costs 30 minutes, which is half an hour, times by $12.60 per hour. But it is estimated that 10% of the hours paid to the assembly workers is for the idle time. So there is some idle time as well. Let's adjust assembly labor. So as I said, in a normal way, half hour 0.5, which is 30 over 60, multiplied by the rate, which is 12.60. This would have been the cost of labor. But there is idle time, which is 100% minus 10%. That needs to be adjusted. So 0.5 times 12.60 divided by 0.9, and that works out $7 cost of labor in a radio. Okay, so far so good. Let's carry on to the production overheads. Is it okay? Right? Production overheads. Recent historic cost analysis has revealed the following production overhead data. They have given us production overhead data over 2 months, 1 and 2. Okay? Whenever we are given overhead costs given in a different periods, always remember, whether examiner tells us clearly or examiner doesn't tell us clearly, we have to stick to one method which you might have learned in paper F2 and again in paper F1. We are going to do it now. High-low method. Okay? We are given for each month total production overhead cost and total assembly labor hours. Okay, so we are given $620,000 and 19,000 hours and $700,000 and 23,000 hours. When it's given without reading any further information, I will read it, okay? Not to worry, I promise I will read it. First of all, look at the high-low analysis. High-low, how does it work? Here are some of the steps of the high-low method. In exam, you don't need to write down these steps. Okay, you don't need to write down these steps, you just need to do the calculations. I need to explain or refresh your memories, that's why. High-low method. Number one, first of all, look at the highest and lowest pieces of data in the question. Meaning, highest number of hours from the data and lowest number of hours in the data. And then look at the cost. Okay, highest hours were 23,000 and lowest hours were 19,000. This was given copy and paste, and the cost information was 700 and 620. Okay, I didn't do anything, I just arranged them highest first and lowest after. That's why it's called high-low method. Now what we need to do is take the difference. Okay, 23 minus 19 equals to 4,000 hours, and 700 minus 620 equals to $80,000. Now what did we understand from here? Meaning is, when 4,000 more hours were worked in a month, $80,000 more were incurred on the cost. Or when 4,000 less hours were worked in a month, 80,000 less overheads were incurred in a month. Okay, and that gives us some kind of relationship between working hours and the cost. Okay, and this helps us to develop variable overhead per hour, which is very simple. Difference between cost, $80,000, divided by difference in hours, which is 4,000. And that works out variable cost per hour, which I suppose you told me, $20 per hour. Okay, $20 per hour. Is it okay? Meaning when one radio is processed, variable overhead cost for 1 hour is $20. If radio is processed for 2 hours, it is 20 times 2, which is $40. Excuse me. And if the radio is processed for less than 1 hour, we spend less than $20 on the radio. Okay, we'll see to it in a minute, or actually you can take it to the answer plan straight away. Otherwise, we will wait it for a couple of minutes. Number 3, once we know the variable overhead per hour, now we are looking at the fixed cost. We can find out fixed cost. As I said, you don't need to write down all these steps. You just need to do number crunching, okay, and then put the answers. Fixed cost is calculated in this way, which is the difference between total cost and variable cost. Total cost minus variable cost equals to the fixed cost. Okay, what we need to do is this. We need to pick up either highest or lowest data, completely your choice, but just choose one of the two. Either go for the highest or go for the lowest. Let's say I'm going for the lowest. Total cost at the lowest activity was $620,000. And if I take away variable cost, which is $20 per hour, and lowest hours were 19,000. So if I remove or take away variable cost from the total cost of the lowest activity, I will end up with the fixed cost, which could be like this: 20 times by 19,000, which is that, and then minus 620,000. Fixed cost will be $240,000. Now, is it $240,000 per hour? No, thank you very much, it's not. Is it $240,000 for one radio? And you say, oh, hang on, in $240,000 I can buy a Ferrari. Why to buy a radio? Oh yes, it is $240,000 per month. Okay, $240,000 per month, because we were using high-low method on a monthly data. If we were applying high-low method on a yearly data, annual data, it would have been $240,000 per year. Okay, now we've got variable cost $20 per hour and fixed cost $240,000 per month. Let's relate this to one radio. Okay, here we go. Overheads. First of all, variable. Variable overheads. Right? What we need to do is simply look into the time of one radio, which is 0.5 hours, and multiply that by variable rate, which is $20 per hour, and that works out the value of variable overhead in one radio, because one radio takes 0.5 hours to assemble and variable overhead is $20 for one full hour. Okay, so variable overhead will be 10 in that case. Is that okay? And now we are looking at the fixed overheads. And for the fixed overheads, remember absorption costing. Now here I need to read a bit more information to apply absorption costing. Okay, fixed production overheads are absorbed. Absorption costing. Fixed production overheads are absorbed on an assembly hour basis on normal annual activity levels. In a typical year, 240,000 assembly hours or 20,000 hours per month will be worked by Edward Limited. Now we are applying the data on a monthly basis, so 20,000 hours per month will be applicable. So idea is fixed cost is $240,000 per month. Remember, using high-low method, divided by 20,000 hours. That will give us OAR. Remember OAR, overhead absorption rate. So 240,000 divided by 20,000, overhead absorption rate is $12 per hour. Okay, multiply this by time of one radio, which is 0.5 hours, and that gives us a share of the fixed overhead cost in one radio, which is $6. And that gives us complete cost information of a radio, including component 1, component 2, other materials, labor, variable overheads and fixed overheads. Let's add them together, and that will give us full cost of a radio at present. 4.7 plus 0.13 plus 810 plus 7 plus 10 plus 6, and in total it is 35.93. Okay, this is the current expected cost per unit or per radio. This is how much we are likely to spend. Looks like we may spend this much. Okay, this would be compared with the target cost. Okay, 3593. Now here you need to identify yourself. Target is to spend 3520, and at the moment looks like expected current cost will be 3593. Can you see likely overspending? Okay, chances that company may overspend every unit, per unit. Minus 3520, it looks like 73 cents per unit. Okay, maybe a cost gap. So cost gap may be 73 cents per unit. Chances are that we may spend 73 cents more than our budget, more than our target, and we should try to do every possible effort to reduce or close this cost gap, meaning we need to bring this overspending down to zero. Okay, if not more than zero, at least 73 cents per radio must be saved. And if examiner goes one step further to ask you, okay, suggest a few possible ways to close the cost gap. In a general way, you can say you can revise the design of the material, you can use alternative materials, you can improve the labor efficiency, you can reduce the idle time, and you can do this and that, non-value addition and so on. But if examiner asks you that referring to the scenario, okay, if the examiner asks you relating to this radio, what Edward Limited should do to close the cost gap, then here is some pieces of advice. Okay, here is some pieces of advice. So leave these answers in here. Cost gap is, for example, they ask you a specific question to discuss how cost gap of this radio can be closed down. Okay, so generally I remember do this and do that. Okay, now specifically accountant needs to suggest something, and then it's the job of the management to control the cost. Accountants can't control the cost, accountants can advise. So in my understanding, this Edward company should do something like this. For example, first of all, look at the cost gap. How much was the cost gap, by the way? If I forget, 0.73. Okay, now look at the component number 1. Look at the component number 1. At the moment, component number 1 is costing us 410 the price, and there is some delivery charges as well. Okay, so what I can suggest is a couple of things in here. Okay, first of all, the basic cost, which is 410. So 73 cents divided by 410 multiplied by 100. Okay, let me do it and I will explain afterwards. Divided by 410 times by 100, it comes to 17.8%. Okay, now my answer suggests that if somehow our purchasing department can negotiate the price with the suppliers to bring down the price by 17.8 or 18%, from component number 1, the whole cost gap can be closed. But you must be smiling that it may not be possible to ask for this huge discount, 17-18%. Not to worry, every little helps. Supplier may not give us 18%. Not to worry, supplier may give us only 1% discount, maybe 2% discount, 3% discount, long as little help from component number 1 comes, we are more than happy. So idea is always do like this. Put the cost gap as a numerator and divide it by the cost of the variable you are comparing with, and that will tell us how much of the cost of component number 1 needs to go down to close the cost gap in total. Of course, company will not close the cost gap in total from the component number 1, but as I said, every little helps. Little saving of cost from one area, a little saving of cost from another area, and hopefully overall cost will be closed. The cost gap will be closed. Here is number 2. Okay, number 2 is about delivery. Did you notice? Delivery cost is $2,400 and 4,000 components are transferred to us. And what if we increase delivery or batch size? Okay, you can suggest, you don't need to give any number, you can just suggest increase the delivery size to as much as possible. Rather than 4,000 components, ask them to put in one lorry 6,000 components, 5,000 components, as many as they can, and that would economize the delivery cost. Number 3, look at the labor cost, for example. So just a couple of suggestions I need to share with you. Okay, look at the cost of labor. First of all, cost gap, which is 73 cents, divided by labor cost, which was $7, and then multiplied by 100. Multiplied by 100 is just to get the answer expressed as a percentage. Okay, so 73 cents divided by 7, it is approximately 10.4%, or if you fancy, just round it off 10%. Meaning is, if labor efficiency can improve by 10%, the problems can be resolved. At the moment, idle time is 10%. What can we do to reduce the idle time to 8%, 7%, 9%? Something, every little helps. So some motivating the workers or improving the morale, okay, that can improve the efficiency of the workforce. Okay, they need to reduce the labor cost by 10%. Okay, right? So that's, I don't think you should suggest cut down the labor right now. They will be demotivated. So better to suggest improve the motivation or efficiency so that jobs can be completed before half an hour and time can be saved, and this time saving will help to close the cost gap. And so on, the similar kind of efforts can be applied to overheads as well. Anywhere they will see non-value addition, cut it down. Okay, there is some loss in other areas as well, okay, which they can see, like wiring, etc. Okay, they can look into those as well. This is how cost gap can be closed. Right? I'm sure you must have enjoyed this session about the target costing, so make sure revise it, study from your study material, and then try to do the exercises, and any problem please come back to us. Okay? So make sure keep doing your regular work. All the very best, and I will see you very soon, sometimes with a different session. Take care. Goodbye.